Hey everybody, Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich here. What a weird day this has been. We were clouded in this morning, kept everything away. Then this afternoon, the heat and humidity built up, and most of the Piedmont escaped the worst. And then we saw this late evening band forming along the cold front, which is still producing severe weather, by the way, through the mountains and foothills. I'll turn back on the warnings because we currently have a tornado warning in effect for the upstate of South Carolina. Now, this is just outside of our area here. But you'll see basically around Pickens, we've had a tornadic storm, which is for Pickens County till 10:15. I will tell you the circulation is weakened. The whole line is weakened. And what's fascinating to me meteorologically, the line looks weaker, but when you look at the reflectivity, it looks weak. But when you look at the wind speeds in here, there's still been some minor areas of rotation. It's not nearly as strong as it was earlier. But I will tell you, the good news there is most of this energy is beginning to die off, and we're starting to see the threat for severe weather decrease. But I'd give it another hour here. The tornado watch is technically up until midnight for all of these counties, essentially the long and west of I-77 until midnight, but we might see it canceled early. Now, remember, my handy dandy graphic to show you the difference between a watch and a warning, because we get a lot of confusion with this. The watch means conditions are favorable for conditions to produce a tornado, and a warning would be one has been developed. So there's a good chance it's either going to be canceled early or will be whittled away way before midnight, because based on the trend in this line of storms, I do expect it to weaken. So let's go back to this line because it's been moving over the same areas again and again. If you're in northern Burke and Caldwell County, it's been a rough night. It's been wave after wave of storm, and we've seen a flash flood warning up there till 11 p.m. The storm I'm watching is just south of Marion, so it's affecting McDowell County right now. There is a little bit of weak rotation there. Camp Grimes up there, Boy Scout camp there for Charlotte Mecklenburg Boy Scouts, that area right in there, some pretty strong winds. Morganton, a little bit of wind. And then Wilkes County, you've seen a couple areas of rotation up there, but it is weakened as well. So that's good news. Now, where the tornado warning was in effect for Pickens, let's go back to that storm because it's roughly right there. Turn it back on. There's a storm, and I'm going to go back to the velocity data, and I'll show you how this was really tight earlier. We're going to go back in time a little bit here. And look at that couplet. You see that little speck of red there? Just west of 6 Mile and north of Old Pickens. That there was a little bit of rotation right there, and then it kind of went away. So those storms earlier, I was watching those, and I was worried that we might see additional rotation. I'll go back to the loop here because if you go back an hour, let's say, and you see these storms, they looked a lot more impressive. Let's go back 2 hours just to show you what they looked like 2 hours ago. So I'll pause this. Let's loop it. So you can see the storms were much more vigorous, but they're kind of sitting over the same spot again and again. One thing we had this evening, which really helped these storms develop, was the temperature shot up into the low and mid 70s. We're in the low 70s now, winds straight out of the south. So even though it's well after sunset, it is pretty warm and actually pretty muggy. Dew points were in the low to mid 60s. They're falling back a little bit, but that gave us the energy for these storms to keep going. So let's look at the future cast. That line of storms still kind of left over. It's going to weaken slowly by 11 o'clock. This is why I think the watch will be canceled early, to be honest with you. And then by midnight, it kind of falls apart. And then overnight into the morning, the front might get re-energized off to the east. So don't be surprised if you wake up to some showers in area towards Wadesboro, out towards Rockingham, going out in the southern pines. Those areas could see some scattered showers or storms tomorrow morning. I don't expect them to be severe, but you might wake up to some rain, even some clouds around Charlotte, and then it pushes off to the east. And I tell you what, this pattern for the weekend is going to be really, really chilly, as we're going to see some mountain snow possibly, and yes, even a frost or freeze for most areas. Tornado parameter, here's what's left of that energy. Still some out there, but it's waning pretty quickly and almost disintegrates overnight. So all in all, good signs here across the board that our line of storms is weakening. Good news for the Piedmont, most of us are going to escape this. We had tornado warnings to the north, the northwest, the west, and the southwest, basically all directions except for east, and then none over us. So we were kind of surrounded today, but escaped most of it. But the mountains and foothills, boy, it's been a rough afternoon. So Hickory, you're pretty much in the clear. I would say you've got maybe another 30 minutes or so before it moves through. Thanks, Matt. Thanks for all the shout outs. I know I hated cutting in tonight. I only got 2 emails, believe it or not, about cutting into Jeopardy. I expected a lot more. I think most people understand how these things work. It's not, we don't choose to cut in because we want to. It's just the way it is. Shelby, you're pretty much in the clear. I'd say another hour. I think we're going to see most of this stuff canceled off here, if not within the hour or by an hour. I don't think we'll be at midnight. I think this line of storms is weakening so much. I'm not even seeing any cloud to ground lightning. The one thing to keep looking at is the velocity data. You see right around Dartersville there, that's really interesting. There's a little bit of circulation right there right now. Yeah, that's a little bit of wind. It's not much circulation. So Shelby, you're right there, and that's off to your west, and that's moving in this direction. So I don't think that's going to hit you. So you don't have to worry about that. If I'm in Shelby or Cleveland County, the storms I'm watching are down here in the upstate. The one that's near Pickens that was earlier, if that re-intensifies, that would be one to watch. And you can see that warning is up until 10:15. I'm going to loop it. But even there, those storms are weakening quite a bit. So unless we get some redevelopment, which it's trying to back there, I think most of us are going to be in the clear. Lancaster County, you're pretty much good. Denver, keep an eye on it. Anson County, no concerns. What does the purple mean? The purple is a tornado warning. If you're talking about on the velocity data, that's something called range folding. That just means the microwave energy from the radar is kind of reflecting back on itself. And that happens sometimes in a kind of a humid setup like this. But purple on the map right there, that means tornado warning if you're looking at that. Statesville, we should be clear. This line is falling apart. I think most of the Piedmont, the Metro Plaza, you're looking pretty good. The only area of real concern for the next hour, and I'm doing this, it's 9:57, so close to 11 o'clock, probably going to be Burke, Caldwell, maybe Catawba County. Melvin, thanks. Yeah, Caldwell County had a rough night, man. 3 storms. I haven't seen any damage from tornadoes, but what I have seen is quite a bit of wind, some inflow. So we've seen some trees down and some power outages. Gastonia, you're clear. Morganton, you've got another storm. You've got another hour to watch. Maiden, I would keep an eye for another hour or so because let me zoom in on Morganton. You've got this storm to your southwest that I would be watching. Not that I think it's going to spin up, but there could be some strong winds. Same for the Maiden area around Hickory. So stay tuned for that just until that. So yeah, Catawba County, you probably got another hour. This is not going to be an overnight thing. So the good news is, guys, I can tell you it's not going to be up all night. If you can wait it out another hour till 11 o'clock, you should be fine. Should be out of that. Ooh, Spruce Pine, that area is clear now, but boy, that was rough earlier. Upper Cleveland County, you're looking pretty good. Got to watch that storm to your west, but all in all, not too bad. Lincolnton Vale, love you guys up there in Lincoln County, great area. You should be okay. On the precipitation part, so someone asked about the purple area. So I think you were talking about this. Yeah. So this is a velocity data. So on the top of the screen, you could see winds away and towards the radar. So the brighter the colors, the stronger the wind. So the purple you're looking at here, that's range folding. That's just, think of that like static from the radar. The radar's having trouble picking that up, so it turns all purple. It's called RF or range folding. It happens when the radar beam kind of reflects back on itself. You'll see some of it around the radar. So it's just an artifact of the radar. It's nothing in particular. Just basically it means bad data, if you want to be honest with you. That's kind of what it means in that area. Tornado warning still in effect there for Pickens County till 10:15. You might hear some beeping in the background. I was just checking. They canceled it for Oconee County, and the latest on that one is near Pickens around 10:15. A severe thunderstorm possibly producing a tornado. It was about 5 miles northwest of Pickens, moving northeast at 30 miles per hour. So we've been keeping an eye on that one down there. And again, that's the storm. If I'm in Cleveland County, that's the one I want to see stay to the west or weaken completely before I can give you the all clear. Rockingham, you're in the clear. TKK, you're in the clear. Yeah, that storm, I agree with you, Will. That storm near Marion, let me focus in on that real quickly because that's the one. I don't think it's rotating, Will, to be honest with you, but I do think there's really strong winds in there. Because if you look at it, it's pretty broad, but you see those brighter colors, and I'll kind of show you what those brighter colors are. So those are 64-mile-an-hour winds. So there are some strong winds in there. That's definitely severe thunderstorm criteria. So that's why I said if you're in Morganton and Burke County, that's an area where you need to be paying attention to this storm because as it moves in, and again, let me do a quick storm track on that storm near McDowell County. I'm going to turn off that warning here just because it's the flood. The flood warnings are important. I don't want to discount those, but it's actually stopped raining there. So let's track that strong wind, which is right around the Camp Grimes area. It's moving off in this direction. So there's the updated storm track. Dartersville right now, Glen Alpine 1018, Morganton so 1024, Valdez around 1032, Eichert around 1039, Sawmills 1043. Boy, Sawmills has had a rough night as well. Then Lenore around 1046. If it's still going by that time, it could weaken because most of what I've been seeing tonight, these things have been starting to fall apart a little bit. Much weaker setup. Something I look at called Cape, which is ahead of this. If we look at that real quick, it'll show you it's not nearly as strong. There's some out there, but it's feigning out really quick. So you can see more and more we're losing that fuel that we had today for these storms to develop. So that's what I'm keeping an eye on. I was hoping by 9 o'clock we'd be in the all clear, to be honest with you. But the way this is looking right now, we're probably going to have to stay on guard here for another hour or so until this line weakens. Any chance the tornado watch extend eastward? No, there's probably no chance at all. In fact, there's a better chance it would be canceled early. So someone asking about wireless emergency alerts. Yeah, so one thing I will tell you, and I know this seems like a shameless plug, but I swear our app is unbelievable. The WCNC app, download this thing because this not only gives you GPS-based alerts for where your phone is, you can also, right now, you may not be able to tell, I have to turn the camera, you can actually click on that and you could be watching what you're seeing right now on the phone. We stream this stuff to our phone. We stream all our on-air coverage. In fact, I can see a little delay that I'm just bringing the phone up now on my phone. And you can also submit pictures and video right from your phone. It's a great app. But if you just have a phone in general, if you don't have any app, period, right? You can go to your settings and go to notifications. And if you scroll all the way to the bottom, and this is an iPhone, you'll see a section called governmental alerts. There's Amber Alerts, Emergency Alert, and Public Safety Alerts. You can turn those on, and you can turn your emergency alerts on there. And those are basically, those come from your cell phone carrier and the FCC. It doesn't cost you anything. Don't need anything special on your phone, and that thing will go off in the middle of the night. And it is specifically based for your location by cell phone tower. Our alerts are based on your GPS location. Those emergency alerts are based on what tower you're hitting. So just be wary of that. But it's always good to have those alerts. Nothing further east. Yeah, probably nothing east. There's a new tornado warning, though. Let's focus in on that. It's just outside of our viewing area, and you hear it going off in the background. That's Rutherford County. So right there, those are the storms we're watching. That's why we got to be on guard for another hour till these storms weaken. So that storm, that's a tornado warning for Rutherford and Polk County. So Emberglow, my buddies at Emberglow, the Murphys, heads up. That's going to be just here south there, south of Lake Lure. Looking at the rotation is not really, it's around Columbus. So Iron Key Brewing, great brewery right there. That's pushing off to the north and east. Mill Springs area, right around the Tryon National Equestrian Center. So not too far from there. And then Green Hill, a lot of hunting property up in there. There's Lake Lure at the top of your screen, Rutherford 10 right there. So beautiful country out there. A lot of horse farms. That's moving off, a lot of apple farms as well. That's pushing off in that direction. Again, that's a tornado warning until 10:45. So, yeah, those are those little storms we're watching back to the southwest, and why the tornado watch is up till midnight, just in case. Let me go back here and look at this. It was right near Columbus, moving northeast at 35 miles per hour. So for folks in that area, if you have friends in Rutherford County, Polk County area, let them know that you should be, in your safe location for now until that storm pushes out of here. Looking up to the north, though, I'm getting a lot of questions about Hickory. So right now, I said Hickory, you need to be on guard for an hour. If there's going to be something to watch, it's going to be that storm to the south. That could move up this way. But again, I will tell you, the overall trend has been weakening in these storms. But as I mentioned, even as they weaken, there's been some strong wind indications in them. So the area, Let's go to Columbus. So there's that rotation. Right? That's one of the weaker rotations. That's actually not. I think that might be a little fishy. There's still some good circulation north of Pickens. That is definitely more of a circulation right there. So what we're looking at right there, and I'll put the circulation on right there, you could see we've got some circulation going on right there. And so the reds and greens, for those that don't know, the reds are away from the radar, so they're going that way, and the greens are going that way. So if there was a cylinder in between there, that wind would cause the air to rotate like that. And so that's how you end up with rotation on radar. And the tighter it is, the more likely that is a tornado. But it often starts very broad and then tightens up, just like a figure skater bringing his or her arms in to spin quicker. Or if you've ever played tetherball, as the rope gets smaller on the pole, that ball flings around faster and faster. That conservation of momentum really does speed things up. So this line is the one we're watching. And just to give you a heads up, if you're just tuning in, those are our 2 tornado warnings right now. For everybody streaming online, I know a lot of folks are like, Brad, that's not in your viewing area. It doesn't matter. We're online. These are people watching us in those areas. So tornado warning for Pickens County for about another 9 minutes or so. And then a tornado warning indicated there in Polk and Rutherford County. That's till 10:45. I do not think it'll last that long. And again, the tornado watch is up until midnight tonight for all of those counties shaded in red. So until those storms weaken, the front moves in, or everything just dissipates, we're likely going to see that tornado watch probably stay up at least through 11, maybe even later than that. Salisbury, you're way out of the range. Don't worry about that. It was a good question. I was surprised it took so long for the tornado watch. Earlier tonight, it looked like there was a 40% chance that was going to happen. I thought, man, it's going to happen because that line's coming in. So it just took a while. Shelby, I would be on guard. Just keep an eye on those storms to your southwest, but you definitely are right now looking okay. Wilkesboro, you're in the clear, it looks like, because everything's sliding off to your east. The Rutherford County storm, let me go back and do a track on that. I'm going to go back. I'm going to try to find a circulation because it's really tiny circulation. To me, there's 2 areas. One is near Columbus, and then there's a little area north of there. So let me back up a little bit. I'm going to do a storm track based on the speed. What was the speed on this? I do believe it was moving 35 miles per hour. So we're going to grab our storm track. We're going to plot it at 35 miles per hour. So bear with me. And I'm going to track it from around Columbus going northeast at 35. That's the updated track. So Mill Spring area, Emberglow Outdoor Resort right in that area, Rutherfordton, Spindale, Forest City, Bostic, and then Ellenboro. So those are the areas that if there is a circulation that stays on the ground, those are the areas of greatest concern. Oop, there's another tornado. So that warning, okay, that's the warning. That's that Pickens County storm. They basically just extended that warning. So let me show you that real quick. So what you're hearing in the background is I have a program on my computer that gives me all the tornado warnings for North and South Carolina. So that's that storm right there. So that's a new warning. That's for Greenville, Henderson, Pickens, and Transylvania County. That's the same storm that was over Pickens. So they just extended the warning more or less. And I was showing you earlier that circulation was much more impressive than the one near Columbus. It's right there. Let's look at the CC values. It doesn't look too bad. I mean, yeah, I don't see a ton of debris. Yeah, all in all, that's not looking too bad. Got to keep an eye on that. But that circulation on radar right there, if there's a tornado, it's right in that area. So that's what we're seeing on the radar. So again, this is why the tornado watch is up till midnight. Until these storms weaken or move out, we're going to have to keep an eye on them. But right now, they don't look like they're not going to make it to I-77 in the same intensity. They will weaken quite a bit. There's our 2 tornado warnings. Rutherford County, 10:45, and then the newest warning, Greenville, Henderson, Pickens, and Transylvania County. Let's look at that one. It's moving into Morganton now. This storm had strong winds with it. We got some de-aliasing going on here. So the radar is trying to shoot through a bunch of storms, which is never a good thing. Let me look at another radar source. So looking at Morganton area, Just strong winds right now moving in. No rotation in that storm. Nice little setup for wind speed. So Morganton, this is a second go around with strong winds for you. Let me look at a different velocity couplet. See if this is going to pop up. New tornado warning for Burke. So I'm going to have to go jump on TV. So we'll keep this going. So we'll be right back. All right, guys, we got another tornado All right, guys, we're going to jump off this stream and jump on TV. So I'm going to bail on you, turn on TV right now, and we'll restream this here in a second, okay? The upstate of South Carolina. So just like before, these three storms all showing signs of rotation again, but the most dangerous storm right now is here right around Burke County. So if you're in Morganton, you need to be seeking shelter in an interior room. Get away from those outside walls and windows. I want you to get to the lowest level of your house. If you can, get to that basement if you have one. Don't have one, doesn't matter, the lowest floor possible. Put as many walls between you and the outside. So I want you to get away from the outside walls to get those walls protection from all that flying debris out there. So let's go back to the radar. The reason we're on is because of that tornado warning right there in Morganton. So let's look at the debris. I don't see any debris signature on the radar. So from the radar standpoint, we're not seeing confirmation of a tornado, but we are seeing rotation in the storm. That means one could be developing. So when you see that on the radar, what you're going to do is issue the warning to try to get out ahead of this. And so that warning is for Burke County primarily, but there's a small section of Caldwell County and even a small section back here, McDowell County, but it's really just west side of Morganton. So Morganton areas right off of Interstate 40, going up into the northern part of the county, This is going to move pretty much straight into Caldwell County. So next up is going to be Lenoir, Sawmills, Granite Falls area. So in around Lenoir, just a heads up, just to put this out there, coming up in about maybe 15 or 20 minutes, if this continues moving off in that direction, you're going to have to seek shelter as well. So I would be getting ready to get into that safe spot again. I know this is the second time tonight that we've had to do that, but this is the same location that earlier tonight we saw severe storms and even a tornado warning. So right around Calvin and Glen Alpine, if you look at the velocity data, there's probably already wind damage occurring there. Earlier this evening, we had reports of trees and power lines down in here, but it wasn't because of the storm over Morganton. It was the storm in the northern part of the county. This time, this is right over Morganton. So everybody in Morganton should be in their safe spot right now. And I'm talking about most of downtown Morganton. And then next up, it's going to be the folks in Lenoir that are going to have to seek shelter. If we go in close here, I'll show you some of the roads here. That's 64. That's 181. That's 126 right there. And then heading over here towards 70. So all those areas right around there will go into the downtown Morganton area. So this is going to be basically just on the north side, northwest side of Morganton as you go towards the North Irvin Road, and then up here towards St. Mary's Church Road, and then down here towards the Calvin area, so Air Park Drive. So those are the roads that are in the path of the rotation. And then it's going to move north and then head towards Lenoir. Lenoir, you're technically not in the warning yet, but the storm is angled right at you. So areas on the north side, Catawba Meadows Park area, right around the Burke County Fairgrounds, Freedom High School, those would be areas where we're seeing the rotation. And then heading up towards Walter Johnson Lenoir Middle School. So those locations there in Burke County would be the areas where the rotation is the strongest. So kind of on the northwest side of Morganton. So let's extrapolate this out. If this holds together, that circulation is going to head up here into Caldwell County. And so it's in Morganton basically right now at 10:19 in the evening. Drexel at 10:25. Gamwell about 10:36. Sawmills 10:40. And then Lenoir 10:43. And then Patterson for the third time tonight, I think, we've had a rotation head towards Patterson. This one would be at 10:51 this evening. Now, some areas are probably struggling to get some of these warnings because we had power outages earlier in this area. Remember, if you do have a phone and you're able to text or call family or friends in this area, please let them know. This is not the warnings from before. This is not we're not mistaking this with the previous warning. This is actually a whole new warning and a whole new storm for parts of Burke County. And behind it, two other storms we're watching. And I will remind you, the whole area in red is under a tornado watch till midnight tonight. So there's a good chance this watch could be canceled early, but it's at least going to go to 11 because we've got warnings in this same area. The thing I've been watching is this tornado parameter. Ahead of that line, we've had some ingredients for tornadoes. And those ingredients will stick around till about midnight. They should go down to zero again pretty quickly after midnight till about 1 in the morning. But the potential is that we could see these things stay pretty active into the overnight hours. I have a lot of spotter friends up in that area, and so far I have not seen any additional reports of damage. But again, remember Vanessa earlier telling us about the damage up there with trees and power lines down. That might be delaying some of these storm reports.
Good news, I would say, Brad, is we haven't been getting any real damage reports either from touching base with emergency officials in these various counties. We did, of course, have some power outages that we told folks about in the 8 o'clock hour when we broke in with the previous warnings. The good news is we're actually seeing a lot of those outages have since been corrected. City of Morganton at one point was dealing with about 1,000 folks without power. Latest update about an hour ago from the city. It looks like most folks should have their power in that area again. Looks like Woodside Place and Woodside Street are the only areas remaining with those outages. We also had quite a few that were reported out in Hickory, and it looks like the 2,000 that were originally reported out in Hickory have since been cut down substantially. Actually, I'm only seeing like 2 outages reported out there. Blue Ridge Energy at one point with about 300. Now they're down to about 18 in Caldwell County, Brad.
Yeah, so that storm is essentially right over Burke County, and we might see those numbers go back up. So what you're looking on the screen right now, we've got the radar on the left. That's the tornado warning for Burke County. That's a live picture from Morganton. Hunter Signs is up there right now. He actually was going up there to check out some previous damage, and then this new warning is there. So Hunter, I hope you're in a safe spot and kind of off away from it, but I do believe he's southeast of the storm, if I'm not mistaken, looking back towards the storm, so it's a pretty good location. And one of the things at night you're not going to see a lot, but one way you can spot a tornado at night is you look for power flashes. You look for, basically, it looks like lightning, but it's coming from the ground, not the sky, and that's an indication that power lines or transformers are being hit by the tornado. Sometimes it'll actually illuminate the funnel, but they're really, nighttime tornadoes are the worst because most people, it's human nature. You want to visualize and confirm the threat. So what do people do? They go outside. They want to see it. You're not going to see this, folks. You might hear it. You might see a flash from a power line, but in most cases, this is rain-wrapped. It's windy. It just looks like a wall of water. In most cases, the wind might be coming just from the thunderstorm and not the actual tornado. The tornado is embedded into what is likely a larger circulation. If I look closely, it's a really broad circulation. It does not look as tight as some of the ones we saw earlier. I'll be honest with you, the ones we saw, right around the 8 o'clock hour, those were pretty significant signatures on the radar. And for as far away from the radar as we were, to see that strong was pretty impressive. The stronger rotation has actually been to the southwest with some of these other storms, like this one around Green Hill, which is the tornado warning in Rutherford County. That one is actually a little more what I would call classic. And then we had another tornado warning there right on the state line in the upstate of South Carolina. Now, unfortunately, those are tracking in the same direction as the current warning. And all of these are going to expire between 10:45 and 11 o'clock tonight. So this is probably going to lead us right into our newscast as we watch this, unless this thing falls apart completely, which it could. But the way these storms have been moving tonight, the atmosphere off to the right here, and I'll just grab my cursor, the atmosphere here seems to be still ripe enough for these storms to at least maintain some level of low-level circulation. And one of the way you could look at the energy, I don't normally show temperatures this time of night, but we're still near 70, and we still have dew points in the 60s. So that's really muggy air for this time of the night, and that allows. So what they did is they extended the warning from the southwest up into Burke County as well. So there's technically two warnings now, Vanessa. We've got one for Burke, Caldwell, and McDowell, and then one for McDowell, Burke, and Rutherford County. But it's still the same two circulations, and I'll highlight those. The two circulations, one is essentially over Morganton, and then this one just to the northwest of Forest City. And these are all moving off in this direction. So you're seeing duplicate warnings here for that reason, because there's potentially multiple storms there that have rotation within them. So last time I count, let's see, that's 4 separate warnings right now, but really this middle one is the same storm. So it's just 2 separate.
And you had pointed this out, I mean, obviously earlier, these are some of the same counties as previously pointed out in the 8 o'clock hour. I mean, is there anything particular to that?
Well, it looks like what's happened. So the reason we're seeing this whole line of storms just kind of sit here and kind of be, the cold front is coming in right here. So these are forming on the cold front, and one after another, kind of like we call it training. You see the cold fronts like the train tracks, and the individual storms are the train cars going over that track again and again. So until the front moves, you're seeing some of the, unfortunately, the same areas repeatedly hit with tornado warnings. Now, as you mentioned, we haven't seen a lot of damage reports that would be indication of a tornado touching down. Most of it's been straight line winds associated with the wind flow going into these, but it's been pretty impressive to see the number of warnings we've had tonight. And I would have probably issued these warnings too based on what you're seeing on the radar. There's pretty strong rotation on there, but they've been very diligent about, at least if there hasn't been damage or that it looks like the circulation weakens quite a bit, they have canceled most of these warnings fairly quickly. It looks like, I'm trying to look for some damage reports. Meesville Road completely blocked. I believe that is in McDowell County, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure where that road is, but it looks like it's in that area around Dartersville, which is where Camp Grimes is. The Mecklenburg County Boy Scout camp is up in that area. And then down to the south, heading towards Green Hills, you're just to the east of Lake Lure. And then this is moving straight towards Morganton and Glen Alpine again. So, you know, Morganton, you're under this warning now, but you've got another system just behind it that potentially could produce another tornado. So the rotation is just northeast of Morganton. It doesn't look nearly as impressive, but I will show you the winds here. And this is why we're probably going to see some power outages at the very least. You could see the winds anywhere from 59 to 65 miles per hour within that storm, which is right over Morganton. And again, areas like Chesterfield and Valdez and Amherst, and eventually heading into Caldwell County, that storm's heading your way. Then go to the south, and you can see this circulation right around between Logan and Green Hill. There is some rotation there on 221. And again, I'll just highlight this with our icon here. There's rotation right there. It's pretty tight compared to the rotation up in Burke County, but it's also closer to the radar, so it's a little deceiving. And I'll kind of show you there. So let's do a storm track on that, because if that continues pushing northeast, it's going to be in Dartersville around 10:51 and Union Mills around 10:35 tonight. And we'll go up there and track the one in Morganton, because I want people in the Lenore to be ready. This warning's probably going to come out here shortly if they don't issue another one. Lenore 10:50. So that warning is up until 11, but it's likely going to be outside of that warning polygon here shortly as it pushes off to the north and east. So remember, if you're home right now and you're in these warning areas, the purple areas, the pink areas, that's where we want you to seek shelter. If you're not in those areas, be thankful there's no warning, but if you know somebody in those areas, call them, text them, let them know that there is a warning, and we want you to go tell them to get into that interior room, away from those outside walls and windows. If you're in an apartment building, get to the lowest floor you can. If you got neighbors or friends downstairs, head down there. But even if you can't get down to the lower floor, even in your second or third floor or higher apartment, you can get to the middle of that apartment or the middle of the house the best way you can. So that's what we want you to do. So the worst of this weather seems to be just northeast of Morganton. And our Hunter Science has been up there this evening checking out previous damage. And I know Hunter is right there on the right. Hunter, what have you been seeing? Any like flashes, like lightning or power flashes you've seen?
Hey there, Brad. We haven't so far. We were driving through Morganton when we got this tornado warning, and we went ahead and moved to the southeast side just based off of your forecasting that I was listening into, trying not to be too close up on those dangerous cells that you're talking about. And I was keeping my eye out while listening to you for those flashes, especially near the ground. We're actually by the UNC Health Blue Ridge Hospital here, a little bit on higher ground, and I'm keeping an eye kind of on the ground level because you can see a pretty good distance from here. I haven't seen anything yet. I will say there's not a lot of rain falling. If my camera's up, you can probably see that. We do see the trees swaying quite a bit. There are some pretty good wind gusts that have hit us out here. No big time rainfall, at least where we're at. We are on the southeast side, as I mentioned, but you know, after hearing your tracking and everything, there was actually a woman who was leaving the hospital. She said, "Is it safe for me right now, do you think, to drive through Morganton and try to get home?" I said, you know, as we always talk about, why we are parked here is to be next to, you know, I was talking with KJ Jacobs, just being next to some sort of structure in case we all need to ditch, run inside, and seek shelter ourselves. And she turned around and said, I'm going to go back and at least head that way until this passes. So that's the very latest from what we're seeing here on the southeast side of Morganton.
Thanks, Hunter. So I highlighted where you are. You're actually on not too far from 18 and 40. That's where that UNC, what is that? UNC Blue Ridge, UNC Health Blue Ridge is right there with that arrow. So I put the arrow pointing right where he is. So he's looking back towards Morganton, and he's in a good spot. He is a little higher up. So if there is damage occurring in Morganton, that's where it would be. And that was great advice not to travel through Morganton, because you would be going right through the heart of that storm. That storm is pushing off in this direction to the northeast. If I loop this, you could see it's moving northeast towards Caldwell County. Now, the next storm in the line is down here, and it's starting to show better signs of organization. It's got more of a hook echo to it now, and it's actually looking a little bit more robust. than the Morganton storm. And so right there near Logan, south of Union Mills, there's our rotation right there. So there was rotation right in this area, and it's actually shifting off to the east. You saw the radar just update. And again, remember, the radar takes about a minute and a half to do a volume scan, we call it, or even a single slice scan. It's a giant dish, so it's got to rotate around and send out a beam. So that takes some time. So when you look at the radar, you can't get caught up in that's where it is. It's probably already moved a little bit, so you got to be out ahead of this. So the areas that need to be on guard, and right there is a strong rotation there heading towards the northeast. So Dartersville, Glen Alpine, Calvin, and then Morganton again. That circulation is pretty strong right there. You see that little patch of green there near Union Mill. So what's going on here is the yellows are away from the radar and the green is towards the radar. So the column of air between those two airflows is going to be rotating. So it would cause the column of air to rotate like that. So if you imagine having a pencil and those orange arrows are your hands, one coming towards you and one going away, the pencil in between your hands would be rotating. So that's what's causing the rotation. And the tighter that circulation is, if we measure that circulation is about a mile wide. And again, that's at the altitude the radar seeing it. Down in the surface, that's probably maybe a football field in width or so. So it's pretty narrow. Looking to see if there's any debris there. I don't see debris, which is a good sign. The radar's not showing us that it's picking stuff up. Because you can confirm a tornado with radar now, because the radar will pick up the debris that the tornado is tossing into the air. So even without a spotter, the radar is sophisticated enough. If it has a good scan of the lowest levels, it can tell us if there's debris in the air, Vanessa.
Are you seeing the radar indicate anything else that folks might be experiencing, like maybe hail or something like that?
Here's the thing. We haven't seen any hail reports. These aren't very tall storms. There's not a lot of lightning for that reason as well. So the fact that we don't have a ton of lightning and there's no hail means these storms aren't very tall, because to produce hail and lightning, you have to have ice in the cloud. So you have to drive that moisture 30, 35, 40,000 feet. That's not happening tonight. So this is all being driven at the lowest levels of the atmosphere. Earlier today, we had really strong southerly winds. Down here at the ground, the winds are coming out of the south, and in some cases 30 to 40 miles per hour. And then you go up to around 5 to maybe 10,000 feet above our heads, and all of a sudden the wind is coming from the west-southwest like this. And so these storms, when they build up into that, they naturally want to rotate. That wind shear causes the storms to pivot or rotate. So these are two supercells. We've got one in Burke County moving into Caldwell, and the other one is basically still in Rutherford/McDowell County, kind of moving into Burke County. So those are the two storms that we're watching right there. So I'm checking to see. I haven't seen any damage reports recently, which is a good sign. This time of night, it's hard to get reports in general, but in this day and age, usually if there's damage occurring, Vanessa, we're going to get reports fairly quickly. And so that's always a really good indication that at least the tornado isn't on the ground, or if it is, it's not in an area where it's causing damage to structures. It might be in the woods or an unpopulated area. So that's a good sign. But we also, another way to search for where the tornado is, if we start seeing power outages, we know the tornado is doing damage to power infrastructure.
Would this be a situation where perhaps when daylight does come, some sort of crews would be sent out to see if, like, oh, maybe we missed something?
That would, aerial surveys could reveal a lot. A lot of times tornadoes go through national forest, state forest, and nobody sees them. And then the next day a plane flies over and there's a path.
Yeah.
So that certainly could happen. And I think tomorrow you might see at least the local emergency managers will go out, check for damage, and then see if the Weather Service needs to be deployed up there. But the concern here is, Morganton, Dartersville, and then Lenore. So this storm is moving right towards Lenore. And I mentioned earlier that the rotation in the Caldwell County is pretty broad, but that's strong winds. Here's the thing. It doesn't need to be a tornado to cause damage. Wind is wind. If a tree is going to break with a 60-mile-an-hour wind gust, the tree doesn't care if it's rotating wind or straight line wind or hurricane. It doesn't really matter what produces the wind. It's the fact that you got a 60-mile-an-hour wind That will break a tree branch, topple a chimney, rip shingles off roofs. So that's all that matters. In this case, we've got those winds. So at the very least, there's going to be damaging winds. So you need to be seeking shelter from these storms just to get away from the windows, because branches or anything breaks that glass, it comes flying in, and however fast the winds are, and in this case, it's 60 to 65 miles per hour. So tornado warning, is technically for Burke County, but if you're in Lenoir or Caldwell County, I want you to treat this just like a tornado warning. So if you're in Lenoir, Patterson, Kings Creek area, go ahead, stay in your shelter location. I want you to stay in the interior room until I give you the all clear. Don't wait for the tornado warning, because we've already got the weather on top of you. And then in Morganton, first storm is past you. Okay, you're getting out of your shelter right now, your safe spot. Maybe get back in there in a minute, because this next storm, which is to your south in McDowell County, is going to be heading your way, and you might be doing this all over again. Let me look at the circulations again. So 2 circulations clearly visible on our radar. Let me go back to them real quick, sorry. Right around Lenoir, southwest of Lenoir, there's a circulation, and then east of Gilkey, near Union Mills, this is near Dartersville, just east of Camp Grimes up there, Mecklenburg County Boy Scout Council camp up there, so Camp Grimes, that is right in that area, pushing up into Burke County. So that is where that storm is, and all these storms have been moving off in this direction, northeast at around 35 and at times 40 miles per hour. Looks like we're going to get an update to that warning, and that is for, as I was just telling you, in Lenoir and Caldwell County to please seek shelter, even though there wasn't a warning. Now, if you needed extra confirmation, there is now a warning. So for Caldwell County, that warning is now until 11:15, and honestly, that's where the storm is. It's kind of moving out of Burke, and it's primarily in Caldwell County. So that is the new warning, which is in effect there. So thank you guys. If you were seeking shelter already, that is what we want you to do, is get to that lowest level of your home or your business. If you can, get to that lowest level and stay there until this storm passes. But that is technically a new warning, but it's for the same storm. Does include parts of Alexander County, a very small sliver, that northwest corner of Alexander County. So technically, Alexander, Burke, and Caldwell County. But I think Burke is going to be more worried about the next storm, which is to the south. So I'm going to step over to the key wall here real quick, guys, just so I can kind of tell you what's going on here. So everybody watching down in the Charlotte area is like, wow, there's been a lot of warnings on. I haven't seen anything yet. Well, that's a good thing. But this front is sliding east slowly. It's been showing signs of weakening at times, but these 2 supercells, this one right here, which is now moving towards Lenoir. So Lenoir, you're in your shelter location. You're staying there. Morganton, you might have gotten out. But here's the thing. The next storm right here, this is moving up in your direction as well. These storms are kind of flying off to the northeast around 40, maybe 35, 40 miles an hour. But the whole front is barely drifting east. So these are kind of tracking this direction, but the front itself is drifting east at maybe 5 miles per hour. So until we either eat up all the instability here or the front moves through and weakens, we're going to see this threat kind of stay up for a while. Here it is, 10:39, the tornado watch is up until midnight. Now, will we likely see severe storms in the Piedmont? Probably not, because by the time that front gets here, it should be weakened. But there's a good reason that watch was up until midnight, because it's at least going to be 11 or 11:15 where we have some tornado warnings in effect for parts of the foothills in the Unifor region. So let me go back into Caldwell County. Really broad circulation here. So we got really strong winds over Sawmills, and then in Lenoir they're coming back this way, but it's a really big circulation. So as I mentioned, I think there's definitely some type of wind damage occurring in there. Whether or not it is a tornado is really yet to be determined, but it probably doesn't matter. It's still very strong winds. Let me draw these back on there. So we've got broad circulation here, but strong winds. The circulation that's the strongest is right here along 64. 64 basically goes from parts of Rutherford County up into parts of McDowell and then goes into Burke County. Then that's pretty broad circulation as well. But you see the bright yellows on our radar. Those bright yellows are really strong winds. So you can see over 60 miles per hour. The threshold for severe thunderstorm winds is 58 miles per hour. So that's all it takes to get a severe thunderstorm warning. So we've got way above that. So even without a tornado on the ground, you're going to have damage, and the tornado warnings are in effect there, but they could just as well be severe thunderstorm warnings causing damage as well. Let me do an updated track here for folks in Lenore. Stay in your shelter location if you're in Lenore. Really need you to stay there for the time being. Track this off to the northeast. So Kings Creek, Elkin, Ferguson between now and 11:06 or so. So that's moving up into parts of Wilkes County. Then our next storm, which is down here, almost to Dartersville. Let me look where the circulation is. It's just south. It's on 64 right there. So I'm going to track the circulation. We're not tracking the rain. We're tracking where the circulation on the radar is. And that's going to put it back in the Glen Alpine at around 11:09. Morganton, 11:14. And then Flat Gap around 11:19. So you potentially could see another circulation pass over Morganton. I'm going to widen this out just to give you the overall perspective, because there's 3 tornado warnings in effect. This one's going to be canceled shortly in the upstate. But if you look at that, there's not many storms out there. We told you this wouldn't be widespread, and it isn't. But boy, where the storms have gotten going, they've been able to tap into some really warm air. And from the 8 o'clock warnings, which were just back to the west of here, this has only maybe moved, this front. Let me look at this, how far this has moved. We had warnings about 16 or 17 miles east of where we had them earlier this evening. So they didn't really move all that much. So pretty impressive storms. Now, I know Hunter's still up there. I'd be curious to see what reports he's getting, but I don't know, Vanessa, if you've seen any more power outage reports up in that area. I have not seen any more damage reports.
I keep checking, and the numbers seem pretty consistent in our area. I mean, to be quite frank, the worst of the power outages at this point seem to have shifted out towards the Hendersonville area, which I did see around that area where all the green is. There, you can see on your radar that we've got pulled up that area is also obviously being impacted. But
there's really strong winds in there, and my guess is too what we're seeing with the front, strong winds, but the ground's pretty saturated, so we're probably seeing some trees come down there as well. But yeah, there's 2 distinct supercells on the map right now, and I will highlight those real quickly here because it's right there. There's one there, and there's one there. And if you're wondering what's a supercell is a type of thunderstorm that has a rotating updraft. These are the most powerful thunderstorms that there are. They tend to produce tornadoes, but supercells produce large hail, damaging winds, and all kinds of other problems. But supercells are individual storms which oftentimes do produce the bigger tornadoes. Around here, we tend to get squall lines, big lines of storms. When you get these individual storms, they are much more dangerous because they're not interfered by other storms, and they tend to do their own thing, and they can rotate independent of each other. So the fact that we have 2 of these kind of rotating and moving through the area, especially this time of night, it's 10:43, is pretty unprecedented in March. To lose the heating of the day and still have these things going strong there. And again, just to highlight where the rotation is, I can clearly see them on radar. It's pretty broad, and there's good reason there's a warning out for these. These would, in almost every instance, you would issue a warning for these because the conditions are favorable for a tornado to develop. So from Lenore to Sawmills, you better be in your shelter location right now because that thing is right on top of you. Cedar Rock, you're next, Oak Hill, Kings Creek, and then moving up into parts of Wilkes County. So that's where it's heading next. Morganton, you're in between storms. So if you're watching me in Morganton online, on air, you've got a couple minutes here. You can maybe get to another location quickly in the next 5 minutes because I'm going to want you there before this next storm, which is down toward Dartersville, gets up in your direction because that is going to be the next storm, and it has rotation in it as well. So I'll look at the rotation there. It's moving up 64. It's right there in the middle of your screen. It's heading towards, it's at 226? Yeah, 226 there. Then it's going to cross over the county line into Burke County. So it's moving through that rugged area there, northeast Rutherford County, southeastern McDowell County, and then moving into the southern tip there, not too far from South Mountain State Park, which is just off to the east there. So pretty mountainous, rugged area there. So you're not going to see much in that area, even at night. During the day, it would be tough to see anything there.
Yeah, this has been the same trend pretty much all evening when we've had these warnings, as these storms are really moving in the same path, mainly to the northeast. And what we've noticed as well with these particular cells that have been tornado warned, they are moving at about the same speed, 35 to 40 miles per hour. So they are moving at a decent pace. Also, this is all the more reasons why we need to have 3 ways of getting a warning, especially this time of night, as many of you are preparing to go to bed and now you're having to seek shelter because of these warnings. But yes, as Brad mentioned, these are discrete cells. Typically, we are looking out ahead of the cold front for these types of cells, as we were doing earlier today before sunset, for this type of activity. But right now we have these warnings in effect until 11 o'clock and 11:15 as these storms move into Caldwell and a part of Alexander County. Now, looking back towards the southwest of the 2 cells that we are tracking right now, this is a good sign that we're not seeing anything that really stands out right now in terms of possible rotation. But certainly looking at that 1 cell, Brad, that is moving near Logan, and that cell is now moving into Burke County, as you mentioned how folks are maybe moving from their safe place thinking they have the all clear. But once again, there's some indication of rotation as we are looking at radar as it stands.
Yeah, so that circulation there is kind of creeping closer to the Burke County line, and reason I'm highlighting this is because this is around 64 and 226 right there. That's right near the Silver Creek motocross area. So if you know where that area is, that's where that circulation is. The other circulation now is much weaker. It's east of Lenoir, between Lenoir and Little River. So it's on 64, kind of in the southeastern part of Caldwell County, heading towards the Kings Creek area. So that circulation. Now, I don't want to say it's weaker, because this can deceive you. As the radar gets farther and farther away from this storm, it has a tougher time with the resolution. The beam width gets bigger. The radar beam's higher in the sky. You know, think about it as you get farther away from a single cell tower. You go from 5 bars to 1 bar. Your signal isn't as great. So as you get farther from the radar, the signal isn't doing as much. So the fact that we have that much rotation that far from the radar, which, by the way, is way down in Greer, South Carolina, if you see that much rotation, that's pretty much producing some kind of a wind damage at the surface. Because if it looks like that with that resolution, you know you're at least getting some straight line winds at the surface. And now the winds are showing up higher, mainly because we're looking higher in the sky. But those are really strong winds. So that is going to bring down trees and power lines. That will cause windows to break. So I want you to stay in your shelter location in Caldwell County until we give you the all clear. Burke County, as KJ mentioned, Morganton, you're kind of running out of time. You're probably going to have to head back to your shelter location as this next storm moves up from the south. Now, I kind of see out the corner of my eye, and they have to tell me in the booth, Hunter is still up in the Morganton area. Is he moving, or is he seeing something up there? Okay, he's staying put right now, which is good, because where he is, Hunter Science, he's in Morganton. And I will tell you, Morganton, if you're Hunter, if you're listening to me, the location you were at earlier, I believe, was right there near 18 and 40. So if I am not mistaken, you were right in this area. And the reason I say that is because now this next storm is probably going to hit you straight on, because it's coming right there. So unlike the previous storm, which passed to your west, you might want to get in a different location for this next one, because it's going to be coming right at you. And the circulation is still way down to your southwest, but you're going to get into some rain here before that circulation gets there. Hunter, are you still up there in the same spot?
We are, but we are going to heed your advice and start moving, so don't you worry. I will say I did just check in with Michael, who is the emergency management director here in Burke County, to ask him if there were any new reports of any downed trees or structure damage from that cell that went up towards Lenoir. He did tell me he doesn't have any reports yet. Of course, like you have been mentioning, it is still nighttime. We we saw the previous cells on the last tornado warnings that moved through this area. It produced power outages for about 1,000 customers. Though that power has been restored, we actually came up here and we're seeing crews leaving the areas that didn't have power then. We don't have any new reports of power outages from that first cell, but like we said, as we continue to move here, we are coming up on 18, going to go through Morganton and kind of move to some safer ground, Brad, as this other cell starts moving our way.
Yeah, good call. I would say go back through Morganton, then you'll get west of this, and it will pass off to your east. That's a good storm chasing technique there. Get west of this line, because this one, unlike the previous storm, which kind of moved just over Morganton or west, this one looks like it's going to be over Morganton to the east. So it's going to be more towards South Mountain area, and then traveling maybe closer to Connolly Springs and the Sawmills area. So folks up there, you know those locations I'm talking about. The areas that I'm concerned about with this next one, more towards like the sunny side, Salem, Drexel side of Morganton, more so than the northwest side, which was closer to Freedom High School. This area, I'm looking more towards like Robert L. Patton High School area, and then right there where Hunter just was, which was UNC Health Blue Ridge. Those areas are going to be more in line with this, and then it's going to cross over Lake Rodas there, and then eventually move towards Amherst, and then maybe towards the southeast side of Lenoir with this next storm. But that doesn't even include the storm that's east of Lenoir right now, which is pretty much on 64 there. Really strong winds, head towards Little River. So folks in western Alexander County, you need to be taking this storm seriously. Even though there's a very small section of northwest Alexander County under this warning, there are strong winds spreading to Ellendale, Little River, maybe even the west side of Taylorsville. Not that it's tornadic winds, but it doesn't really matter. It could be 40, 50, 60-mile-an-hour winds there. Hickory, folks in the Unifor region, you need to be on guard for this next storm. This storm coming out of McDowell and southern Burke is probably going to clip the northwest side of the Hickory area. So anyone in the Unifor region, especially closer to the Burke and Caldwell side of the Unifor, that's the area that we would be watching for potentially damaging winds. And again, that rotation is pretty much over South Mountain State Park, which, the South Mountain State Park kind of takes up parts of Cleveland County, southern Burke County, and extreme eastern, southeastern McDowell and Rutherford County. So South Mountain's a big area, pretty wide open there. That's where that circulation is going. And as it crosses out of the mountains, it's going to head towards the Sunnyside, NOLA area, Salem area, there on the southeast side of Morganton. I think that's the area that I would be watching out for there. So over South Mountains right now, pushing to the north and east. The fact that we haven't got damage reports from emergency management, from our Twitter feed, I usually get a ton of information sent to me from our spotters that we haven't gotten. That's a good thing. I'm actually pretty happy, because that tells me we're not getting something on the ground that's causing widespread damage up in those areas. But both of these warnings go to 11:15. So we're getting pretty late at night. The other concern I'm going to have, Vanessa, is that we're getting to the time of night where people probably are going to sleep, aren't paying attention to what's going on. So one thing you're going to want to do is make sure you charge up your phone here for the next couple of hours. I don't think this will go well into the overnight, but I would be ready to have maybe some alerts going off between midnight, maybe to 12:30 if these storms hold together. And one thing you're going to want to make sure your volume is up on your phone, make sure you have it charged up, and make sure it's ready to go. And maybe just keep that shelter location ready to go. Keep your helmets in there, maybe a bottle of water, a flashlight, maybe a battery pack, something like that. That would help kind of keep everything kind of charged up. Really, really interesting to see some of the reports we're seeing across the board of some minor power outages, but nothing widespread in our area. So we're looking at, I was talking to you, we're looking at some video from earlier tonight, some pictures from earlier tonight of a possible funnel cloud. This was around 6:10, 6:05. That's up in Yanceyville. So a little bit different system from earlier tonight. So we saw a lot of funnel clouds and wall cloud reports earlier tonight, but haven't seen any confirmed touchdowns of these, just some really strong signatures on the radar. So the one we're talking about here is right here on the this is really moving into Alexander County. That latest volume scan right there pushes it into the northwest section of Alexander County. So northwest of Taylorsville, north of Little River, that's pushing north towards the Wilkes County line. Then we've got the second one, which is just moving out of South Mountain State Park and is crossing into Burke County. These are kind of trending east a little bit. For the first time tonight, there's a little bit of a shift east. Let me loop this. And you can see these individuals, these two supercells are actually drifting to the east slightly. And so we're starting to see a little bit of a shift to the east. So that means the front's moving, Vanessa. And I think we actually are going to start to see the shift to the east. Now, naturally, the first question I can see a lot of folks around the Charlotte area going, are these going to be heading our way? Well, just based on the trends, we would be looking southwest of Charlotte. Anything in the upstate would be something of a concern. Right now, as KJ mentioned, everything's weakened down there. So these are primarily going to stay north and west of the Charlotte area. The areas that we'll have to pay attention to are primarily going to be Hickory, Morganton, Lenoir, Taylorsville, maybe Statesville. I don't think it'll make it all the way to Statesville, but northern Iredell County would be the other area. So let me circle that area of concern. Basically right in here, I think I would be watching these for the next hour, hour and a half till midnight tonight, because that's going to be when the watch expires. And just to reiterate, we'll go back to this real quickly. This watch is up until midnight for those same areas. So I should have just showed you this. The area in red kind of shows you the areas that we're concerned about. Probably not going to make it all the way to Charlotte, but might be close to Hickory, Shelby, Statesville area if they hold together over the next hour or so.
And the midnight figure, is that related to the heat of the day burning off by then, or I guess what is?
Two things. We'll lose the heating. We'll start cooling the atmosphere down enough that we lose the instability, but also the front should be pushing enough colder air in from the west as well to help score. So it's two things. It's loss of heating of the day and the cold front bringing cooler, drier, stable air in. So the combination of the two should help shut these things off. And I will tell you, it's already starting to happen. I know we have two tornado warnings. Like, Brad, how is it weakening? The fact that we're not seeing lightning tells me the storms are getting weaker because they're not developing higher. We don't have hail, we don't have lightning developing, so that means the storms aren't developing vertically. So the updrafts aren't staying or building up, and so that's going to allow these storms to weaken. The problem is the wind fields are so strong that they're keeping the low levels of these storms spinning, even though the updrafts aren't, building them back up. So again, two areas, northwest of Taylorsville, South Mountain State Park. There's our two circular. Those are literally the only storms now in all of the two-state area. So if I widen this out, you can see that little line is it. We look to the southwest. I'll even look at a wider radar view. I mean, that'll show you. Look at the trend. That whole line over the last 3 hours is weakened, but look at the two little tiny storms that are left. The only two left are the ones that we have tornado warnings for. So looks like they're whittling some of these down. Okay, what they did is I expected them to do this. They actually issued another warning. It's the same storm for northwestern Alexander County. And we told you that this is probably going to be the case, that we would want to keep this warning intact here, because that is definitely one of those things you got to keep an eye on, because as they drift to the east, and you'll hear my computer go off there briefly, that's just a new warning. So that warning is actually, I know it's a new one. It goes to 11:45. That's for northwestern Alexander and eastern Caldwell County. So that's for that storm there. It's really confusing because you got so many warnings, but it's only two storms. And let me break this down real simply. We've got one storm here near Ellendale and one south of Morganton. Those are the only two storms. Don't get caught up in all the flashing purple. Those other warnings are really because they're still in effect from the previous location of the storm. So if I track those individual storms near Ellendale, that one's moving that direction right now, 11:03, and then the next one south of Morganton. So we'll keep tracking this coming up here at 11.
Thank you, Brad. And of course, we do want to begin here our newscast at 11. Of course, starting with this breaking news, the threat of tornadoes as we remain on the air here. We thank you so much for joining us. Of course, we're following minor flooding as well from tonight's storms in the Carolinas.
Right now, storms continue to move throughout the region. WCNC Charlotte has team coverage of the storms tonight. Our Hunter Signs live in our Chevy Storm Tracker in Morganton.
Yeah, we're going to get to him in just a few minutes. We do want to see where these storms are, where they're headed. I know Brad has been detailing those details for us leading up to this point, but let's recap if we can, Brad.
Yeah, this has been a long night of tracking these storms, so let me give you the latest if you're just tuning in at the top of the hour. We've been kind of breaking in and out of programming since about 8 o'clock tonight. We had one series then. This has been the second series. So the latest is the warning that we're most concerned about right now is this first one, which is technically for Alexander and Caldwell County. I would kind of disregard that Burke Caldwell one because it's not really in effect anymore. It's right there that we're talking about. And let me show you the rotation. It's pretty broad. It's north of Little River, north of Ellendale. It should stay northwest of Taylorsville, but there's circulation right there, and it is tracking off in this direction. Let me grab the tracker here. Tracking off in this direction at about 40 miles per hour. Again, didn't even have a city there, so let me retract that. The circulation north of Ellendale. So Ellendale, you should be in your shelter location. So Boomer around 11:17. So storm number 2 is the other one, which is just to the south of Morganton now, coming out of South Mountain State Park. If we look at the circulation there, same kind of thing. It's there, South Mountain State Park, southern part of Morganton. The area I'm talking about is just across the county line there as you come out of South Mountain State Park in the Enola, Salem, Sunnyside area of Burke County, and we'll do a quick track on that. That's going to go towards the east side of Morganton, so Eichard, you would be in line for this as well. Connolly Springs around 11:24. So those are the two storms that are causing all the problems. There is actually no other storms or much rain out there. There's a few sprinkles back to the west, but I showed this earlier. This was a really telling loop. This is a 3-hour loop. Look how that line of storms has been whittled down, and then in the last couple of frames, the only two storms are these two tiny cells, which are supercells, that are producing the tornadoes. And there's the two tornado warnings that we're tracking right now, moving to the north and east. I've been looking at storm reports. I have not seen any come out of here. I actually have them turned on the map in case we get a confirmed spotter report of some kind. And so far, we have not seen any confirmed reports come out of there. A lot of flood reports. Flash flood warning still for Burke and Caldwell because they've been hit so repeatedly with the rain. That flash flood warning is up until 2 o'clock in the morning. So I'll be honest with you, the flash flooding could be a big issue as well. You probably do not want to be driving around tonight in Burke or Caldwell County because you could have trees down from tornadoes or wind, but also washed out roads due to all that flash flooding going on. So they just extended that tornado warning into Wilkes County, which is really kind of what we expected, and that's just the same storm moving up into Wilkes County. So it looks like that's going to stay away from Iredell County. Iredell County looks to be okay. Hickory is the one area that I'm really watching closely because I'll go over to the map here and show you that one in the southern part of Burke County, the Sunnyside, Salem area, south side of Morganton there, right there. This is trending east, so Eichard, Sawmills, and then west side of Hickory there, I would be prepared that this circulation might move there. Northwest Alexander County, that's moving away, but this one southeast side of Morganton. Remember, the first storm tonight was on the west side of Morganton, so it moved through this area. Then it moved up there. The next one came up from the south. It's kind of in Morganton east, so Hunter Signs was on the east side, rode it out as the first one went by to the northwest. He's booking it back this way on 18, so we can look back at this storm as it travels to the south and east of Morganton. So talk about a crazy evening. Morganton's had storms all around them, and some of the biggest damage reports we saw today were from storms in the upper part of the county, which were pulling in strong winds and causing some tree damage in those areas. So I'm just checking to see.
And Brad, while you check
Yep.
that, I'll chime in for a few seconds. Also, too, we're really noticing that these storms are moving now towards the east more so than to the northeast. In addition to that, we're really seeing this cold front sort of push ahead some of these storms. As we started the tornado coverage around 8 o'clock, these storms were back over into western Caldwell County over near Globe, Patterson, west of Lenoir. Now these storms are east of Lenoir, certainly moving this northern storm. That particular cell is now moving into Alexander County with those strong winds, and also east of Morganton now, as previously it was just west of Morganton. So we're certainly seeing these two cells ongoing for tonight. And again, that tornado watch is in effect for at least another 55 minutes to an hour.
Okay, so we just had that updated warning there, and it does, and as I expected, this is kind of what I was worried, it does include Hickory now. So they updated that warning for the southern Burke County storm, and that does include the Hickory area. So the fact that we're seeing that issued for the Hickory area is not surprising. I kind of expected that to happen, but you can see that new warning does include parts of Catawba County and the Hickory area. What's interesting is, as you were talking there, KJ, I was pulling up the terminal Doppler radar. There's actually a much better view of this circulation there on the Caldwell Alexander County line. That is really an impressive little circulation there, because if I highlight the winds, so winds are 45 miles per hour away from the radar and then 25 miles per hour towards the radar. The negative number means the wind is coming at the radar, so it reads negative. That helps us with the direction. So basically 45 mile per hour winds are going this direction and 25 are coming this direction. So what happens in between those two wind fields? You rotate the air, and what happens is you get rotation, and that causes either a mesocyclone or a tornado. So that's a pretty strong signature still showing up right there in northwest Alexander County. And then we come back to the Morganton area. This one's a little bit weaker, but you can see that same kind of broad, it's much broader. The red again is away, and the green is towards. So the natural indication, this is how the radar tells us where there's rotation. Where we have coming and going very close together, you tend to see rotation. So that's where that rotation is occurring right now. So just to recap, these warnings get updated, but they're for the same storms. New warning for northwest Alexander County and northeast Caldwell County till 11:45. But the latest warning is this one for the Hickory area. This is the newest warning. This is in effect until 11:45 as well for Burke, Caldwell, and Catawba County. And the latest on that, guys, that does include the Hickory area. So that's all of the Unifor region. People in Hickory, please seek shelter until 11:45 or until this storm diminishes.
All right. Brad, I know you said that you're going to continue to look for damage reports. We want to get over to our crew that's on the ground looking to see exactly how the storm is impacting folks. So Hunter Sines has been in the Morganton area in the Chevy storm tracker. I know, Hunter, you were kind of trying to move away from where you were previously.
Hunter, what are you seeing?
Yeah, Fred and Vanessa, right now we are in downtown Morganton on 18, and I'm going to flip the camera here so you can kind of see what we're seeing. We've gone through some patches of rain. Some have been rather heavy. You can see the wind whipping the rain on our windshield and on businesses nearby. And at other times it's like this. It's pretty calm, but you do see trees swaying as it is windy conditions out here. We did have to move. We've been trying to bounce around, trying to steer clear of the bad parts of these supercells, as Brad has pointed out, because Morganton has been, dancing with these storms, for a lack of a better term. But earlier in the day, I do want to bring up some video, because it hasn't only been the winds. There have been some significant flooding, especially up in the Boone area. This is video that you're seeing here of flash flooding about 3 hours ago. This is posted to Twitter up there. And then the second video is actually some flash flooding happening outside of Appalachian State University there in Boone. The person who tweeted that saying that this was flooding at a dorm on campus. We don't know yet the extent of the damage to the dorm or how much flooding actually made its way inside of that dorm. We have reached out to the university to see if we can get some information, but we just haven't heard back quite yet. Back here live in the Chevy Storm Tracker here in Morganton, we are actually about to turn around and make our way to Freedom High School, where Brad has pointed out, so we can kind of ride out the rest of this supercell that's making its way through our area. safely, of course. We like to be next to some sort of heavier structure in case we need to bounce out of the vehicle and seek shelter ourselves if things get bad. But right now, not a lot of rain. I would say wind has been the biggest culprit here in the Morganton area all night from what we have seen. It has produced some trees, caused some trees to fall down actually on some power lines. Earlier tonight, there were about 1,000 customers without power, but when we got up here, it was being restored. The city says that power has been restored to those customers already. We have not heard of any reports from emergency management. I checked in a couple of minutes ago before we went on the air, and no reports into their office of any significant damage or flooding. But right now, as you can see, some calm conditions right now as we brace ourselves for this next cell that continues to move through the Morganton and Hickory area. We'll send it back to you live from the Chevy Storm Tracker.
All right, Hunter, thank you so much. And as always, be safe out there. We wanted to touch on some of the power outage impacts that we're seeing from this storm. You know, really has been kind of a transformation from earlier this evening. You might recall if you were with us in the 8 o'clock hour, we saw a whole lot of power outages north of Lenoir, kind of around that Patterson area. We had a couple thousand reported over in Hickory. Of course, Morganton, where Hunter was, we just saw him. They had a power outage reported, around 1,000 people impacted there. And those were actually wrapped up pretty quickly. Those were all cleared out by the time we actually got our crew out there. And as you can see from this Duke Energy map, we're seeing most of those outages concentrated out towards the Hendersonville area at this point, which is going to be out towards our west and a little bit to the south. From the focus of our local tornado warnings, about 3,000 folks reported without power out in that area. And then also just checking in on the Blue Ridge Energy map, which obviously this is the Duke map, but we were following the Patterson outages there earlier. Most of the outages we're seeing Blue Ridge Energy reporting concentrated over towards Wilkes and Allegheny. I'd say about 1,600 or so folks impacted there.
In about 20 miles to the east of Morganton, again, is Hickory. Then Brad was talking about that. Some of the things we're seeing in Hickory that our Hunter Signs was talking about, the little bit of flooding, trees down. The same concern, Brad, you spoke about with Hickory because of this newest warning up until 11:45. You're saying Catawba, Hickory included, along with the Burke, Catawba, and Caldwell counties warning that you're watching very closely right now.
Yeah, so that area, you probably heard me refer to that Unifor region. If you're not from that area, you're probably, what the heck is the Unifor, right? Well, it's where these four counties come together. It's the unity of these four counties: Alexander, Burke, Caldwell, and Catawba County. That's basically the Hickory metro area. So from Brookfield to Conover to Eicher down towards Meadowbrook Village area, you're basically on the edge of this storm. But what I'm watching is the circulation with this storm is back here south of Valdez and Eichert. It's drifting off towards the east. KJ was mentioning how there's a little, we've noticed this, a little shift to the east in the track of these. They were primarily moving northeast, but I would say they're moving like east-northeast now. And so this is heading towards the Eichert area. So Hickory 1133, and likely the northwest side of Hickory I'm talking about. So in Hickory, those folks that live on the east side, you know, maybe heading more over towards areas as you go east towards, you know, basically over towards the Conover, Claremont area, you're probably going to be more safe. But the Longview, Hildebrand area up towards the North Lakes, you know, basically from the center of town west, just west of the Catawba Science Center, you know, heading over there towards the Hickory Aviation Museum. Those are the areas, the Longview area, which are probably going to be closer to the track of this than on the east side, which are over there towards, you know, the Claremont area and Conover and heading over towards the Rock Barn in that vicinity. You're going to be much safer over there because the storm is likely going to be just west of there. So as we look at the track, I'll kind of plot that out. I'm going to put the track back on here. And if I track the circulation, which is right there on 18, which was really close to where Hunter was. He was not too far from there earlier. So the circulation passed just to the east of where he was. Flat Gap, 1118, Connolly Springs, 1123, Eichert, Rodis, Sawmills, around 1130. And again, when you see these times on our storm tracks, please don't take them to be super specific, because if the storm speeds up or slows down, those would adjust by a couple minutes. So I always like to tell you plus or minus about 5 minutes. Get to your shelter location 5 minutes before that time on my screen. and stay there 5 minutes longer because that is kind of the way these storms go. They pick up speed, they slow down, they rotate a little bit. So this is a general idea on where you should be in your shelter location. Now, the all clear, I can give you some all clears back to the west here for areas west of Morganton. You're good. If you're in upper Burke and Caldwell County, basically, you know, where you go north of Morganton along 64, anywhere north and west of 64 in both counties, you're kind of in the clear. The area is shifting more towards the eastern part of 64, so more towards the airport there in Hickory and more towards eastern Lenoir, and maybe, I would say not even eastern Lenoir, maybe closer to the Little River east of Sawmills would be more, and then Taylorsville. Now, Taylorsville, that's an area I would be on guard here. These are the folks that probably need to pay attention tonight the most. I'm going to draw a line here. I'm going to do a track straight up here. Anybody that lives in these areas, even if you're not under a warning, don't go to bed without charging that phone up or having alerts turned on. Because if you live in Hickory, if you live in Little River, if you live in Taylorsville, if you live in Love Valley in the northwest part of Iredell County, you're going to want to be prepared because these storms, these two supercells, are tracking in that direction. Statesville south looks good. Unless this thing takes a big shift to the east, I think we're going to be fine there. The good news is not only is moving to your northwest, but the overall trend in these storms has been to weaken. So the tornado watch, and I'll show you the tornado watch again, the areas in red, that is up until midnight tonight. Thought maybe we'd see some more counties whittled away. I think they're just going to leave it up. I think you'll see this watch stay up until 12 a.m. And so what's the difference between a watch and a warning? We always like to show you, the cupcake graphic. This works really well. When we have the ingredients for something, it's a watch. So the ingredients were in place in that red area. Once a tornado is either formed, spotted, or detected on radar, a tornado warning is issued. It's a more imminent threat. And so that's what we've seen tonight. We've seen both of those issued. Unfortunately, the tornado warnings came way before the watch, as the watches sometimes are put out several hours ahead of time. Tonight was not one of those nights. So the two warnings in effect right now is going to be northwestern Alexander, eastern Caldwell. That's 11:45. So that's going to be for another 29 minutes. And then eastern parts of Burke and northwest Catawba, which includes the city of Hickory, that is in effect until 11:45. Now, these storms could move out of there quicker, which means they could be canceled sooner, or the storm could weaken and it could be canceled early. But until you hear me say all clear, stay in that shelter location. If you're in those purple polygons, those are the areas we want you to be protected. And like I always say, if you're not in those areas, but you know somebody that is, call them, text them, DM them, tell them, hey, tornado warning, take this seriously. Just stay in your shelter location until the all clear is given. The good news in all this, I have a ton of spotters in that area. We have over 1,000 WCNC weather spotters. Not a single report of damage so far.
Wow. Wow.
So that's a good thing. I mean, it's a good thing we're not getting those reports.
And you talked about how some of these watches came down before I should say the warnings,
yeah,
you said came down before the watches. That's significant given the time of day that this is, because, and this is why you're pressing this so much, because this is, it's important for people to be vigilant, especially this time of day or night, we should say.
Yeah, I mean, most of this didn't happen until the sun started going down. Things started popping around 8 o'clock. The sun set at 7:37.
Yeah.
So this happened after dark, and two problems you have with after dark: spotters don't become really good for seeing the tornado. You can still report damage. You don't see anything. People are driving around, and people just pay less attention to their surroundings at night. So there's less people probably watching the news, paying attention. So this will catch people off guard. And, yesterday we were really concerned about the daylight hours. And this thing slowed down so much today and really made it more of a nighttime risk. That's the other part of this. We thought it'd be more of an afternoon risk, and now it's more of a nighttime risk, and that's continuing to be the issue. So let me go back to the radar real quickly, because there's two areas of circulation. I can see them clear as day now. Right near Valdez. Again, really strong circulation here, and I'm going to plot a couple things on here. I'll jump over to the map real quickly. Now, those winds don't seem off the charts, but what you're seeing there is the winds are 22 miles per hour away from the radar and 16 at. So if you take your hand and if you had a pencil, right, and you go like that, the pencil will spin in your hands. That's what's happening there. So that's one area of rotation. And then going to the north and east, we've got another area of rotation, which is right there in the northwest corner of Alexander County. That is the area where we got another clear rotation. It's a little tighter up in that area Let me move the map up there. It's kind of in our blind spot here, but right here north of Taylorsville, there's rotation just south of the Wilkes County line. So some good news. I think we're going to see that one weaken a little bit, but Hickory, this is good news for you, because if I loop this, see where this is moving. This is kind of traveling. Let's go back a couple frames. Can you see the distinct areas of rotation? I mean, it's really clear. We had one here and one here. I can loop that a couple times and you could see it. That's, you know, you see those two storms rotating side by side. So the good news is, I think Hickory, this is going to stay to your west. But still on the west side, I want you to stay in your shelter location, especially if you're towards the airport and the museum over there, the aviation museum. I definitely would stay in your safe spots, especially Valdez, Eichert, and Sawmills. And then Little River and areas west of Taylorsville, you're probably going to have another storm move right over those areas. So guys, I think the good news is we're not getting a lot of damage reports right now, but we want you to be safe, because in this case, it could be the time of night, as Fred mentioned. Maybe we're not getting as many reports for that. But the other thing is you worry about is lack of communication. Maybe there are damage reports, but we just can't get them, or people can't get them out. Hunter Sines, he's up there in Burke County. He's been there kind of on either side of Morganton. Hunter, where are you heading, and are you hearing of any damage reports in and around Burke County?
Yeah, Brad, we are actually headed still west out of Morganton. We actually just went through downtown Morganton. No reports still from, no damage or flooding reports from emergency management here in Burke County. I did just reach out to emergency management team out in Catawba County to see if we could get any reports from earlier in the night, or just if they're seeing anything there so far. I haven't heard back just yet. Just minutes ago, as you were kind of discussing the path of this cell and where it was heading, is where I reached out. So still waiting to get any kind of confirmation on anything happening out there. Right now, we are not seeing too much rain, and actually the wind, from just looking at the treetops here going outside of Morganton, the wind has started to die down from at least where we're at, but it's sounding like, from what you're saying, Brad, is that this storm is kind of to our east, if not southeast, from at least where we are here on the west side of Morganton. Brad?
Yeah, this is well east of you, so you're in good shape now. You could head back that way. I want to show you a product that we sometimes don't show in the air, but it's called shear tracks. And so what I'm looking at here is I'm looking to see where shear is developed from the radar, where the radar thinks there was wind shear. And it's areas of blue, and it's in miles per hour. And you can see there's a little track through Morganton earlier. And again, it's a 1-hour track, so it plots it. You can see how those tracks have kind of shifted. And it was much stronger down to the south. You see down in parts of Rutherford and McDowell County. We actually had a little better track down there. But all in all, you can see that the shear, at least showing up on the radar, is much less than it was before. The only rotation I'm seeing right now is right here over Lake Rotus. It's essentially south of Sawmills, just there on Lake Rotus. The wind, the reds, again, go in this direction. The greens go in this direction. So Connolly Springs Road down towards Malcolm Boulevard, north of Rotus Road. So this is going to stay west of Hickory, which is good news. You know, that's a much more highly populated area. But the North Lake side, that side of town is really close to that circuit. In fact, this is moving back into Caldwell County, and so the Sawmills area. What's interesting, the warning for Alexander and parts of Caldwell County, that storm is all the way up here. It's in Wilkes County now. So that one we could probably, in all essence, I would forget about that one, and we need to focus on this one right here. So this is the storm that's a much bigger concern right now. It's the one last storm out there that's moving in. I want to look at these other storms. They're not, these two storms, there's a little bit of rotation in them, but nothing like we've seen earlier. So these little cells. The thing about the storms tonight, they've been tiny. We sometimes refer to them as mini supercells. These aren't the monsters that we normally see in the late spring or early summer. These have been really small. They're low topped. You'd notice I don't have any lightning on the map right now. It's not because I turned it off. It's just because there's no lightning to show out there. Debris signature, I don't see any of that on the radar as well. So all indications are these storms are rotating. They're just not producing damage near the ground. And I saw an amazing image earlier tonight from the upstate from exactly one of these storms when it was near Seneca. It did not produce a tornado, but it had this amazing rotating wall cloud. And that wall cloud was pretty spectacular, but it never made it to a tornado or touch the ground. And I think that might be what we're seeing with a lot of these, because the radar's seeing that rotation but not seeing the tornado make it to the ground.
I guess I'm curious about, you pointed out that area where you've got obviously wind coming in one direction and wind going in the other direction. How sustained are those two opposing winds, if you will?
So what we do is we call it gate-to-gate shear. You combine those two winds. So if you've got, let's say, 30 miles per hour outbound and 20 inbound, that would be a 50 mile per hour rotational wind. So you combine them. And then sometimes you have to combine it with the forward motion. So if the storm's moving northeast, the east side of the storm is spinning at 20 miles per hour, but it's moving at 20. The wind on the right side would be 40. You got to add those up. So that forward motion. So that's generally been the wind speeds I've seen. I call that EF0, EF1 type tornado winds. They're not really strong, 60, 70, 80 miles. But remember, it only takes 58 mile an hour winds to cause damage. So you think that's not a ton of wind. Your roof, your trees, all that doesn't matter. That type of damage or wind can cause some big time issues. I think we brought up the camera from Lenore.
Yeah, there's a lot of rain going on.
Yeah, this is High Brighton Mountain. So they got the cross up there, which lights up the top of the mountain, and there's a couple cell towers up there. But boy, is it coming down. That is that storm basically right over, it looks like, High Brighton Mountain.
And earlier you said that the rain, the flooding, even though there are not really a lot of damage reports, that flooding would be a concern as we move throughout the evening.
Yeah,
more
because,
so.
you know, we've been talking about how, boy, these places have been hit by several tornado warnings. Well, even if a tornado warning didn't produce a tornado, there was still rain coming out. So they've been repeatedly hit by rain. And at night, that's the other dilemma you have. Washed out roads, trees coming down, flooded roadways. Sometimes black pavement, when it's wet, might not just be wet, it might be water. And so when you come upon it, it's really difficult to tell if it's any deeper than that. So the storm that you're seeing on the picture right now is right over High Brighton Mountain, which is just on the east side of Lenore. There it is. They've whittled down the warnings, thankfully, to kind of consolidate them. So there's technically two warnings now, Burke and Caldwell, and then Alexander and Caldwell. Catawba's been taken out, which is good. We knew we were worried about Hickory, so Hickory staying to your west. And these are going to be up for about another, let's see, 18 minutes or so here. So we're going to see this up for a little bit longer here. But I'm liking the sign of all this. Aaron Duncan, who's a great weather spotter for us, he is in the Valdez area. He says no damage so far at 11:19, but he said it has been really strong winds. He has seen some really strong winds up there. And that's a great report, because that would confirm to me what we're seeing on the radar, strong winds, but maybe not a tornado on the ground, because these wind speeds, you know, again, these are about 5,000 feet off the ground at this rate. Those are 60, 70 miles an hour. So pretty strong winds up in that area. And there's still rotation there between Sawmills and Petra Mills. There's still pretty broad rotation. You see the red and greens next to each other. That's an indication of rotation on the radar. So the fact that we're still seeing that there, and then just off the map, you can see the rotation has moved up into the Wilkesboro area. It's just out of the range of the terminal Doppler radar, which is the FAA radar that Charlotte Douglas International uses for wind shear, so planes don't fly into these. But you can see that storm moving from parts of Caldwell County into western Alexander County. So we're down to one storm, really, that we're watching in our area. And I kind of mentioned this earlier tonight, that we weren't going to see widespread storms, but the ones that get going, I think every storm we've had, even though there's only been a handful, all of them had tornado warnings at one point tonight.
Yeah.
It's been pretty crazy.
Now, you said oh, I'm sorry, KJ.
So yeah, and Brad, you know, we talked about in between warnings about how these storms have a similar setup to what we typically see with a tropical system. We're not getting, say, the hail, we're getting the low-level moisture, but we're also still getting the rotation. We're not getting the lightning, but we're getting enough rotation for these storms to be warned. In addition to that, many of them are producing winds that are capable of producing damage, as well as the heavy rainfall. So we're dealing with potential wind damage as well as potential flash flooding with these particular cells. Whether or not a tornado is actually touching the ground, we're still getting indication of rotation as we're seeing it right now on radar with this particular cell that's left. In the grand scheme of things, this is the one cell that's over the area right now, but of course we are keeping our eyes to the south and west. In the meantime, I do encourage people in these areas to seek shelter and stay in a safe place, but also too, it's late and you want to have multiple ways of getting a notification.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, because a lot of folks, probably many of them would have been to bed already before 11, but it's getting late. You got to stay alert, especially in these areas. The areas on your screen, Grace Chapel, Little River, Taylorsville, and then Rocky Springs, all of those cities, you're in the path of what is still pretty significant rotation on the radar. Whether or not it's on the ground, it's hard to tell, but the whole point of these warnings is to try to issue them before it touches down. And I see we got a new warning being issued here coming up. It looks like it's for, that's up towards the Virginia border. So the line's moving up towards Virginia. You see up towards Mount Airy, a new warning up there. So that's outside of our viewing area. But this is the one warning that we're watching right now, and it is technically up for a little bit longer. That is still a significant circulation on the radar. I mean, it warrants the warning from Sawmills to Granite Falls to areas just south of Oak Hill. And that warning is up until 11:45. I was looking at a couple different things here in that area. I know the Central Alexander Fire Department up there, they're monitoring as well. I've not seen any reports from them either in the western part of the county. Some of the fire departments up there, been following their Twitter feed to make sure we haven't seen any damage, have not seen any reports of damage either. But you guys, I know we're seeing still a lot of power outages, which makes sense because one of our spotters said no damage, but I'm still seeing really strong winds.
Yeah, it's kind of incredible to see. It's almost like the outages are around us.
Yeah.
You know, so you're pointing out certain areas where the warnings are, and we're seeing like the outages to the north and east and to the south and west. And we do have this map here from Blue Ridge Energy. So we mentioned Allegheny and Wilkes are seeing most of the concerns in the Blue Ridge coverage area, about 1,600 still reported there. So no improvements since we last checked in with that map. However, we are seeing actually some improvements with the Duke Energy side of things. We had told you before, Hendersonville at one point was dealing with about 3,000 power outages. That's been whittled down to about 400. So that's looking a lot better. We're still seeing some, they're going to be reported out towards, I'd say like Taylorsville, Wilkesboro. But the earlier outages we were telling you about in Hickory, those are pretty much cleared up. I think there are two that are kind of reported around the Hickory area. Morganton, as we mentioned, that's cleared up. And so I would say, as far as being without power in our area, folks have been pretty lucky. Whatever has been, taken out has been restored, I'd say, fairly quickly.
Yeah, it looks like, I think Alexander County, like you said, might be the ones with the worst power outages. And that's kind of telling because that's where that circulation moved in the northwest part of the county and a new circulation moving in there. So I've been getting a lot of questions about via social media about Charlotte. Hey, can I go to bed? Is it okay in Charlotte? Well, here's the thing. We're good in Charlotte now because these storms are northwest of us and moving away. If we were going to see storms, we would be watching to our southwest. And if you look down here, this is where our storms would come from, and they would move towards Charlotte. There's nothing down there. So that's a good sign. And because these storms are northwest and moving northeast, they're staying away from areas like Statesville, Mooresville, Maiden, Lincolnton, the Lake Norman area. They're staying mainly into Alexander County. And Alexander County right now is where the main action is, not only from the power outages, but where we're seeing the rotation on the radar. It's right around Little River. It's right on the county line with Caldwell County. So this is moving basically due west of Highway 127 and Highway 64. Where those come together, that's where we're seeing probably some of the worst rotation on the radar. So, areas west of Taylorsville, more in the Ellendale area, heading up towards, Three Forks Baptist Church area, the Brushy Mountain Sports Park up in those areas. And as you head up towards the north, you're heading towards areas like 18, which then goes up into parts of Wilkes County. So those are the areas that I'm referring to that this is heading towards. And that was an area that was probably hit by the previous storm, which caused some of those power outages. But I was looking at the power outages, like you said, in Alexander County. They lead the pack right now in our area with like a 400 or 500, which is pretty significant just because the population density there isn't what it is in other locations. So there sounds to me like we might have had something touch down maybe in the western part of the county up there.
Yeah, and remarkable that we don't have more damage reports considering how long you guys have been tracking the activity since about 8 o'clock this evening.
Yeah, and that's a good thing in this case. I think the fact that we're not seeing that. In this day and age, one thing that has changed with tracking storms over time, we usually hear about damage pretty quickly. Social media, the one thing, there's a lot of negatives of social media. I'll tell you, for weather, it's been a blessing because you get instant reports. If something's on the ground or something's happening, you're going to know about it fairly quickly. And I actually use it quite a bit in our coverage because it gives me some confidence, just like a spotter on the ground saying, hey, this is what I'm seeing. If we're not seeing my Twitter feed light up with damage or pictures, probably not seeing something on the ground just because of the number of people I have. So just to update you, we're down to one warning now. The one storm, it's the one that's on the Caldwell-Alexander County line near Little River. First time tonight, I actually see a lightning strike there. So that's interesting because that means this storm has actually got a more vigorous updraft because you don't get lightning unless you're getting higher up in the sky. Higher up in the sky is where it's colder. You're producing ice. The way you get lightning, ice crystals or snowflakes rubbing against each other create the static charge, which then produces the lightning strike. And there's a very close correlation within a lightning spike, we call it, and tornadoes. So when you see that jump in lightning, you know the updraft is strengthening slightly at the very least. And we'll see if we see more lightning come out of that. But that's a sign that storm, really of all the storms tonight, it's the first lightning strike I've seen. It's a positive strike as well, which means it's coming up out of the top of the storm pretty high up there. So that's our last storm. In Charlotte, for the most part, we're okay. We got two little cells back in McDowell County, but no signs of rotation in there at all. Even looking at the radar, you see where the rotation is, and you don't even have to really be a meteorologist to see how that rotation is. Really, the bright yellows there really tells you Little River, those are some strong winds in there. Let's look at the query, show you the wind speed. So 66 mile per hour winds. That's pretty strong winds, even outside of rotation in that storm moving through Little River. So again, tornado warning will continue for Alexander and Caldwell County here. Coming up here at 11:45, which is going to be about 9 minutes from now. So we'll see. They might extend it, guys, because it's still in the middle of that warning polygon, and it likely is not going to be out of it by 11:45. So don't be surprised if we see an additional warning issued for this storm.
And when you say polygon, can you explain what you mean by it?
So polygon is basically, it's that shape that you see the warning is. You probably remember warnings used to be for whole counties. Now the warnings are whittled down to more of a part of a county because of the storm. And coming up in the next couple of years, the storm warnings will be even smaller. They will literally be a storm track, kind of like the hurricane cone that you see for hurricanes. We will be able to do that for actual individual thunderstorms. The whole point in that is to reduce false alarm. You don't want to warn the whole county if the storm's in a small section. So the point here is to try to get down to the smallest section possible. Warn the people that need the warning and don't warn the people that don't need the warning. So the polygon is that area in pink. It's the shape that the Weather Service will use to issue the warnings. It's essentially a storm track, because if I show you where the rotation is, and if I were to draw a fan or a storm track in the future, your warnings will look just like this. It'll be for those individual cities of where the threat is, either hail, wind, or in this case, a tornado warning. So Bethlehem, Little River, Ellendale, Taylorsville, not Bethlehem, Ellendale, west side of Taylorsville, Rocky Springs, and eventually up there towards Wilkes County as it goes into the Wilkes part of the area and then exits the region. So
it's sort of starting to tilt a little bit too towards Taylorsville. You notice that little nudge to the east a little bit?
It is shifting a little bit to the east. Tell you what, that storm, even though it's the only one left, is not showing the same kind of weakening that the other storms did. It's actually still got a very strong couplet, and it's also got a little hook echo kind of signature to it. What I mean by that is this little appendage coming out the back. that's the precipitation wrapping around the updraft as it comes in. So that storm is not really weakening all that much. Our Hunter Sines, he's been in the Chevy Storm Tracker up in parts of the foothills. Hunter, where are you now, and where are you heading?
Yeah, Brad, we are finally heading out of Morganton onto Highway 40, just to see if there's any type of damage there heading towards like the Hickory area. Although that warning has been lifted, I did check in with Catawba County's emergency management team. I'll go ahead and flip the view right now. As you can see here, it's pretty calm on this side of Morganton as we head towards the interstate. But Catawba County emergency management team tells me that there was no reports yet of any damage. She did tell me that they were monitoring it closely. I also just reached out to Alexander County's emergency management team. I'm still waiting to hear back from them. As you were mentioning, the tornado warning was on that line, so I went ahead and reached out to them just to see if they are hearing of any reports of any damage from the wind or any type of flooding issues there. Again, I haven't heard back yet. Things are calm here in Morganton. That kind of bounced around a lot of those supercells, as you had mentioned, all night. So no rain. We're not seeing much debris in the area as far as down trees or branches on the streets or the sidewalks. I would say for the most part, the biggest story here in Morganton earlier in the night were the customers who lost power after a tree had fell on some power lines. That, though, has since been cleaned up. So right now, as you can see, leaving Morganton, heading towards the Hickory area, about to get on 40 here. But that's the latest here, and we'll send it back to you guys back in studio.
All right, Hunter Sines reporting. Thank you, Hunter. And as Hunter was just talking about, he saw some downed trees, or really not a lot of damage, but a lot of rain out there. What exactly is the National Weather Service going to be looking for as the sun comes up and they can assess damage and they can tell whether something touched down?
Usually the first step in that process is going to be if there was damage reports, and they'll go to the county emergency manager. The emergency managers will be the first ones to go out in the county tomorrow morning, see what kind of damage they had in their county. If they find something significant, they'll probably call down to the Weather Service and say, hey, I think we might have had something up here, and then they will send a crew up there. In this kind of situation, if there was a whole bunch of damage reports, social media reports, video, they would just come up on their own, but they'll probably wait for emergency managers just so they can pick and choose the areas to go to, because this would be a huge area to cover tomorrow because of all the warnings. And a lot of it's very rural and very unpopulated, hard to get to. I mean, South Mountain State Park, Linville Gorge, Wildlife Area, I mean, those are some areas where it's hard to get it. People go there to get away from people. So getting back in there might be aerial surveys might be the best. Drones might be the best way to survey this. And Hunter made a good point. He said he was checking with Alexander County, and I really want to focus in on there because the area I'm talking about near Ellendale, north of Little River, right around Ellendale Elementary School, on 64, just east of Johnson's Milling and Feed, that is right where there's a very small circulation on the radar, and it's heading northeast as you go into the northern part of the county. So it looks like it's going to stay on the west side of Taylorsville, but very close to H&H Arena, and then heading up towards Little River Baptist Church, and then up towards areas as you go up towards the Boomer area, and eventually 16 and 18 kind of come together going into parts of Wilkes County. That kind of area is where that storm is heading. And this is a second one to move through there. So the cities on the map that I'm pointing out, Boomer, Ellendale, Old Gilreth, and Oakwoods, those all are areas that need to seek shelter for the next 10 to 15 minutes or so. Our warning's set to expire in 2 minutes, but I'm still seeing some rotation. I'll be really curious to see what the Weather Service does here. I've not been chatting with them. Looks like they're gonna let this one expire, I would imagine. I don't see any
update either with that, Brad, in the Weather Service chat. Yeah. Also, too, with that one, if it does expire in 2 minutes, still yet keep your guard up and stay weather aware, at least for, like you mentioned, the next 10 to 15 minutes minimum, especially with the type of rotation that we are seeing based on radar right now. In addition to that, we're detecting strong winds, heavy rainfall, and we still have that watch in effect until midnight. Or tornado watch.
And that'll be coming up at the top of the hour. So For folks that are not in those areas, so Charlotte Metro, Southern Piedmont, we're in the clear. We're okay. You can go to bed and feel safe. The areas that are of concern are going to be Alexander County, Burke and Caldwell. We're still keeping an eye on a couple additional cells back there, and maybe northern Iredell. Those are the areas KJ mentioned. The tornado watch. Those are the counties that are under the watch. So that is set to expire coming up here at the top of the hour, and it looks like they just expired the tornado warning. Let me go back and make sure they cleared it out. It does look like they did. No, it's still showing up, but I just got the notification from them that they are going to let that expire, which would have gone away anyways in a minute. So sometimes the system will not clear it out because it's going to expire within less than 60 seconds. So that warning is going to be allowed to expire, but let's look at the other cells. There's only a couple little showers out there. Nothing strikes me as too strong right now. We're not seeing a bunch of lightning. We'll look at this again. I'll loop this. There's the warning is gone. The only thing in effect now is that flash flood warning, which is in effect for Burke and Caldwell County. And as Fred mentioned, the flooding is an issue. I would be very safe traveling tonight and pre-sunrise because roads could be washed out, trees could come down. I think some of the trees we saw come down were probably just wet soil, and then you had the winds, and that was enough to bring down some trees on the power lines.
All right. Well, as we mentioned, make sure that you got everything charged up. Make sure you have that app downloaded just in case you need to get anything alerted to you overnight. Once again, stay up to date with the latest alerts on your phone. We're going to continue to kind of monitor things behind the scenes here. But once again, download that WCNC Charlotte News app. Brad, KJ, thank you so much. Fred?
All right. Stay safe, everyone.
Good night.